Awesome. Thanks, Chanel. So I want to welcome everybody again. I'm so happy that you've all decided to join us tonight. Just as a reminder, Stephen White is here also moderating. So if you have any questions related to the painting tonight, be sure to comment them in the public chat or send a message to Stephen and he can relay some questions over to me. Like always, I'll run through our supply list, what you'll want to have on hand so that you can paint along with us. And like Chanel said, if you feel like we are going a bit too fast for your liking, then don't forget you can always watch the recording of this video tomorrow. Is the sound okay? Okay. Don't forget you can always watch the recording of it tomorrow on Michael's YouTube page.
1 second. Should be good.
Okay, cool. All right, good. So thanks for letting us know. So like always, let's start by going over our supply list. So tonight we called for an 8x10 stretched canvas, but honestly, you can do this on any size rectangular canvas that you have. We are using FolkArt Acrylics tonight. So the colors we'll be using are Mystic Turquoise, Real Brown, Thicket, School Bus Yellow, Vintage White, and Navy. And then, ta-da, we have a star of the show tonight. We're going to be using a brand new paint that we just came out with this year, actually. It's called FolkArt Sugar Metallics. It is a really beautiful, super lustrous metallic paint that has a really neat, sugary texture to it. It's like a super duper metallic paint. If you know about our FolkArt Treasure Gold, it's very similar to that, except it has little tiny like bead particles in it so that you get a really unique and interesting finish texture to your finished paint. So we'll be using that tonight as well. And we're going to be using the color Starry Night. And of course, all these things are available at Michael's and michaels.com. I called for a pencil and a good assortment of flat brushes. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, you guys. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our pencil and mark the horizon line. So the thing about this painting is that it's inspired by Van Gogh, who was a very famous pointillist painter. So lots of impressionism. So we're going to go with very loose and organic lines tonight. So when we're thinking about our horizon line, we don't want it to be totally straight. We want it to be a little bit topsy-turvy. So there's going to be a little bit of wave to it. So that's what mine looks like. But just a reminder, not everybody's will look the same in the end. But I went ahead and drew my horizon line. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and draw these two big branches that we see here. So they're a little bit topsy-turvy as well. They come to a point at the top, and we stop about 1.5 inches from the top of our painting. So that's what we're working with. All right. So once yours looks like that, it's time to bust into some paint. So I'm going to put onto my canvas, or my palette rather, 1 part navy blue to about 2 parts Mystic Turquoise. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to add to my palette some Thicket. And some Real Brown. Okay, so I'm going to take a number 12 flat brush, just a medium-sized flat brush, and I'm going to use this to mix together my navy and my Mystic Turquoise until those two colors are really well combined. Okay, now with this color we just mixed up, this is going to be the main sky of our painting. So I'm taking the sharp edge of my flat brush and I'm going to go ahead and follow that horizon line that we sketched out with our pencil. When you take the edge of your brush like that, it's much easier to lead a really clean line that you'll be happy with. And then I'm going to work my way up, just base coating the top part of our canvas. I always say when you're finding the positioning of your canvas, work smarter, not harder. So if you need to twist your canvas around so that you get a better angle to make your work easier, then by all means, feel free to do that. I do that all the time. If one direction of moving your brush is more comfortable, then turn your canvas. So that,
You say the color.
yeah, so this color is a 2-to-1 ratio of 1 part navy blue to 2 parts Mystic Turquoise. Flip back around. I'm just taking the edge of my flat brush to get into the grooves. Okay, so now that I'm done painting the top part of my canvas, I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush. Now, for the bottom part of our canvas, I'm going to go ahead and paint that in with Thicket. And again, I'm just using that medium-sized flat brush.
Unless somebody asks, should you paint around the edges of the canvas too?
Yes, absolutely. Now would be the time to do that. Okay. Now, lastly, I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush and then fill in our little tree areas with our real brown. And again, I am using the sharp end or the edge really of my flat brush. But if you would like to switch to a liner brush or a round brush to get the edges of a shape like this, totally feel free to do that. This is just what I prefer. But I'm making all of those sharp edges at first so I don't have to worry about them later, and then I can just easily fill in those big shapes. Then again, I'm going to rinse my brush. Okay, so now once I'm at this point, I'm going to go ahead and blow dry my canvas so that it's nice and dry before we move on to the next step.
Kathy had a question. She said she was curious why you're painting the brown section last, when the rest of the canvas is still.
That's just totally a preference. If you wanted to, you could very well paint the brown section first. I just wanted, honestly, to get the mixing done in the first part because I knew that there might be a couple of questions about it. So I wanted to do the blue first. But it's honestly, you can do those 3 different color sections in whatever order you prefer. Okay, so now for the fun part, you guys. I am going to take my pencil back out, but you could use a stick of chalk, whatever kind of sketching tool that you prefer to work with. And we're going to go ahead and sketch out our little ghosts. So the first thing we're going to do before we get into our ghosts is I'm going to actually mark out this biggest light orb in our top right corner here. And that's going to be representing our moon because I think it looks pretty sweet when one of the ghosts is kind of flying, curving alongside the moon. I think that just adds a cute little detail to it. So I'm only going to mark out that one orb. The rest, we're just going to go ahead and paint around our ghosts. But what we're going to do is we're going to make a big U right alongside our circle. Trying to get a good angle so that you guys can see this the best. But we're painting, we're sketching out a U like this. And then I'm going to follow along and kind of give him a little wispy tail, like so, one of our ghosts. And then I'm going to have the other ghosts peeking around our tree, like he's hiding. Okay, so once you have your ghosts painted in, I'm going to apply some vintage white to my palette. And next, I'm going to take a smaller flat brush. So I'm going to be working with the number 6 flat brush. I'm going to dip it into my vintage white. And just following the sketch that we just made of our ghosts, I'm going to go ahead and fill them in. Okay, so now we have our little ghosts. Okay, so I'm not going to rinse my brush yet, but I am going to add to my palette yellow. I'm using a number 6 brush, by the way. So we're going to add some of our yellow. And now I'm going to mix together a ratio of 1 part of our yellow to 2 parts of our white until we get like a soft, warm yellow color. Very soft. Okay, so for these next couple of steps, you guys, we don't want much paint on our brush. This technique is called dry brushing. And because the reason we don't want a lot of paint on our brush is because we don't want to fully saturate the shape that we're about to paint. It's kind of going to give off the appearance of like a cloud almost. So I just mixed together that light yellow color, and you can see I have quite a bit of paint on my brush. So what I'm gonna do to get rid of that is I'm just gonna take my paper towel and I'm just gonna wipe it off on my paper towel until we're left with something a little bit more manageable, okay? So starting in our big moon circle that we sketched out in the beginning, I'm gonna start in the center, holding my brush perpendicularly. I'm gonna start in the center, and then I'm gonna move out, swirling around and around and around in a circle. And then I'm kind of coming back in, filling in some of that blank space. So we're gonna be left with something like that. So you see what I mean? To make more sense why we offloaded our brush a little bit. So continuing with that same technique, remember, very little paint on your brush. We're gonna create all of these orbs that we see in our sky. So yours is gonna end up looking different than mine, but we're gonna do the same technique for all of our orbs. Starting in the center, working our way out. I'm gonna add a little bit more paint to this one. But that's the thing, you can always go back in and add more paint, but it's much harder to take away. So some orbs will be bigger than others. Your orbs will be bigger than mine. Some of mine will be smaller than yours. That's the beauty of this. They're all gonna look different. But we're just filling in some of our negative space, leaving some of it still open, some of it still blue, but just going around and kind of evenly dispersing these little circles until they're, fairly evenly spaced. Maybe some in the corner here. I like the look of that. Till it's something like this, okay? So now I'm gonna go ahead and rinse my brush. And taking our number 6 flat still, I'm gonna dip into my original yellow color, and I'm gonna sketch out inside my biggest orb, a little crescent moon shape. So that's gonna be a big C. And we're gonna kind of come inside, mark out the inside of the crescent. And then we're gonna go ahead and fill that in. Okay, and now with the yellow, I'm gonna go ahead and paint a little tiny circle. And my circles will kind of vary depending on how big the rest of the orb is. So if it's bigger, maybe I'll paint a bigger circle. If it's smaller, maybe I'll paint a smaller circle. But just in the center of all these little orbs, we're kind of painting in the source of light. Okay, guys, so while I still have some yellow paint on my number 6 flat, we're gonna start to make some of these lines that'll really make it look like pointillism. We're gonna start at the top of our green here, and I'm holding my brush perpendicular to my canvas, and I'm following that horizon line, painting very thin lines that are, breaking and then reforming, and the length of the lines are going to be totally different each time, just to add some interest into our painting. We're painting lines like that, okay? All along the top of our greenery. If you want to switch to a liner brush for this, or a round brush, if you prefer something like that, you can totally feel free to do that. But we're painting that first row of lines. And then once we're done with that, we're going to do 3 more rows right in a row. And one thing that I'll tell you guys, this is just my personal preference, I think it kind of adds something to the painting, is that when one of the other lines that is touched or butting up to it breaks, then I want the line next to it to still keep going. So I'll kind of show you guys. So we don't want, like, 3 spaces in a row. You see how if one line is going, that's when that line breaks, and so on. I think that just makes it look more finished and a little bit more professional. If you have ever been in chorus or band, it's kind of like the idea that if somebody next to you is breathing, then you know to hold the note because you don't want there to be a gap in the sound. It's kind of like that. Was that too nerdy, Stephen? I'm showing my chorus identity.
I think it was just nerdy enough.
Okay. But yeah, we end up with something like this. So once you've gone ahead and done that, I'm going to rinse my brush. Since you guys kind of get the idea of what we're doing now, we're going to do the same thing around our orbs with vintage white. So starting around our first orb, our moon, we're making those little dashes. And I'll show you guys where I started it. And I'm going to do about 2 rows coming out from my moon. And we don't want it to go too far out because we still have more colors to add to our space. But to all of the orbs, I'm going to go ahead and do about 2 rows for each.
Well, when you finish that, do you think you can bring your canvas up?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So guys, since I already have some white on my brush, I'm now going to go ahead and mix another couple of colors together. So for this one, we're looking for like a 50-50 ratio of our Thicket to our vintage white. And with this one, we're going to paint about 4 or 5 rows down beneath our yellow here. Okay, since we're so close on the bottom here, I'm just going to wrap up my landscape or greenery in my painting. I'm going to add a little bit more navy to my palette, and we're going to finish this up with lines of navy. Looking good, you guys. All right, so we're nearing the end. So I'm gonna go ahead and now add some Mystic Turquoise, my palette. And we're gonna do those lines around the white lines that we went ahead and placed around our orbs. Now we're gonna go in and do the same thing with Mystic Turquoise. And we're doing about 2 rows of our Mystic Turquoise. And we're not overlapping any other space. We're going about 2 lines deep. And then once you start to go into another shape that's adjacent to your previous one, we're just kind of bending to the will of our previous lines. Okay. So once we do about 2 rows around our orbs of our Mystic Turquoise, now I am going to mix together a 1-to-1 ratio of our brown to our navy. And this is going to be a color that we're going to use to apply to the lines of our tree. So just very sporadically, not quite as, in a row as we have been doing previously, but just following the natural curves of the shape that you drew. And I'll get mine started and then I'll kind of hold it up so that everyone can have a good look. But we're making it very curvy, very bendy, kind of like how wood grain really would act. Okay, so now with that dark brownish, bluish color on my brush, I'm just gonna take whatever I have left and get quite a bit of my vintage white so that we make a very light color with that. And I'm gonna go ahead and paint the rest of my lines with that color. Okay, we're so close. Now we're going to fill in the rest of the space with our navy blue. So the rest of our sky with our navy blue. So I'll give you guys some tips for this. So if you want to do 2 or 3 rows coming from each orb, and then when the orbs really start to kind of conjoin, I just would try to make them as even as possible. So I'll kind of show you guys this little area where they're really wanting to meet up. You see there? I'm just making it even so that they all kind of have their moment. But I am going to make sure that there's at least a little bit of navy surrounding each orb so that it separates that orb from the orb that's next to it.
Color mixed with navy.
So this right now is just navy. So close, you guys. So I'm gonna take my navy and with my little round brush or a little liner brush or a little flat brush, I'm gonna paint two eyes on my ghosts and a smaller mouth. Don't forget about his friend here. It's looking cute. Okay, so now for the star of the show, I'm gonna apply some of our Sugar Metallics Starry Night onto my palette. And if some of your navy is dry, I'm not gonna cover all of my navy, but just covering some of those navy lines that we painted. I'm gonna go right on top of it with the same width and length with my Sugar Metallics and just sporadically, just I'm choosing a few different lines to add some metallic realness to. And if some of your navy lines that you want to put Sugar Metallic on aren't dry yet, just wait a little bit. Wait for it to dry up a little bit. It will. But when you're done, we're left with something that looks a little bit like this. How cute. Okay. So I want to give one big last thank you to all of you who have decided to join us tonight. It's always such a pleasure painting with you all. Remember, if you decide to post your creations on social media, don't forget to hashtag Make It with Michaels and Plaid Crafts. We love to see your finished paintings. It's always such a pleasure painting with you all and having the opportunity to be here tonight with Michaels. So thank you, Chanel and Stephen as well. And I hope you all have a wonderful night and a wonderful Halloween. Bye, guys.